As was hoped, the Empire of Alba passed legally to Empress Caitilin. Her martial inclinations had helped her gain the prominence and respect she had earned prior to holding the empire, so she hoped to continue militaristic exploits. This would stand in sharp contrast to her father's long and peaceful rule, but with the moral backing of the Cathar faith, a stabilized realm, and the large armies of the empire at her disposal, there was little keeping her from pursuing conquest. Eager for glory on the battlefield, she declared a holy war on Scotland soon after ascending to the throne. The Empress was the most capable military leader of her time, leading the largest and best equipped army in the region. Needless to say, the war ended quickly with Alba's victory. Afterwards, a deeply distant member of the Horning dynasty announced himself and challenged the Empress's rule. Garbeth invaded Brittany with a massive army of mercenaries hoping to become Emperor of Alba and restore Catholicism to the land. Such a move would undo generations of work, and as such, Caitilin responded mercilessly. She landed the entirety of the Alban military on the peninsula and hunted Garbeth down until he was imprisoned and all of his mercenaries slain. Afterwards, she felt compelled to take a small break from warfare. The peace treaty with Scotland was still in effect and more troops needed to be trained. Caitilin was becoming impatient, however. One of the cons of her father's lengthy rule was that she wasn't exactly young when she became empress. She felt destined for glory, a glory such that she would be remembered for centuries to come, but she wasn't sure she had time to accomplish it. She was 50 years old, and only a duchy had been seized from a fairly weak and tired enemy. To attain the glory she sought, she looked towards a more challenging foe. The Umayyad Empire had become the bane of Christendom, conquering far into France while converting the peasantry to Islam. Catholic crusades trying to liberate the region ended in embarrassing defeats. If the Cathar Empire of Alba could push the Muslims back to Hispania, it would simultaneously weaken the authority of the Pope, but also strengthen the respect for Catharism. It would be the ideal conquest. Fully confident, Caitilin invaded the Emirate of Anjou. Of course, she did this during another Catholic crusade for the Kingdom of Aquitaine. With the combined forces of Catholics and Cathars, the armies of the Umayyad Empire were easily smashed. To cover more ground, Caitilin split her forces in two. She would lead half her army to Madrid and take out the capital, while other trusted generals would occupy Anjou. Most armies of the time were incapable of such a move, so Caitilin hoped this would further demonstrate the capabilities of the Alban military. Unfortunately, her forces in Madrid became bogged down and suffered heavily during their sieges. Meanwhile, another long-lost Horning Catholic tried seizing Caitilin's throne. Yargis was much smarter than his predecessor. In addition to attacking while the Empress was distracted, he also landed his troops right in Dublin, seizing the capital of Alba and its surrounding lands. He was the first invader to accomplish this feat, and as such, Caitilin was the first empress to allow it. These setbacks could prove fatal to not only Caitilin's goals as a conqueror, but could be a death blow for the empire itself. Luckily, the Umayyads surrendered shortly after, and the armies of Alba descended on Yargis. His men fought hard, but would be forced into retreat. They went as far as Alban occupied Scotland before making a final stand. Caitilin ensured she would personally oversee the final battle with a foe whose sacking of Dublin brought her immense embarrassment. Much like Garbeth, Yargis was defeated. Unfortunately, Caitilin was gravely wounded during this battle. She was never as capable a warrior as she once was, and the wounds never fully healed. Still, she brushed it off in order to continue her wars. Enough time had passed since the last war of Scotland. Caitilin once again invaded the crumbling nation and defeated it easily. The so-called Kingdom of Scotland was now reduced to a couple islands off the coast. The Empress would not be satisfied until Scotland ceased to exist entirely, but those last remaining islands would have to wait, especially when there were Vikings to fight. Actually, the Vikings had converted to Catholicism and mostly gone away by the time of Caitilin's rule, but she had always been frustrated by their history raiding the Irish coast and how little could be done to stop them. The Yolms Vikings were likely the last of that brand of warrior, and as such it would bring her a great deal of personal satisfaction to rid the world of their influence. She invaded their holdings in Iceland, while once again splitting her forces to fight them in Norway. Tragically wounded or not, Caitilin and her forces proved too much for the Vikings and they surrendered their territory in Iceland. But now Caitilin had half an island far north of the Isles. She was not content with half, she would have it all. The other half belonged to Norge, an old Viking kingdom who'd converted to Catholicism. Much like their pagan neighbors, they fell swiftly, leaving Caitilin with all of Iceland. She adored the beautiful scenery of Iceland while she was there, and was proud of her conquest. Therefore, she renamed the Duchy of Iceland after herself. The island would then become known as the Duchy of Caitilin. The nobles back in Alba thought it was perhaps a tad bit egotistical, but no one dared challenge the Empress. She was encouraged to take a rest from war. The armies were tired and the conflicts were proving expensive. The nobility was becoming agitated at having their soldiers away for so long as well. Caitilin's wounds were still not healing effectively, putting the kingdom under a great deal of worry for her. It was a miracle she was surviving this long, and more fighting seemed to tempt fate. Caitilin was not done yet, though. She had one last thing to do before she would allow herself to pass away. The Kingdom of Scotland still existed, and this was unacceptable. The kingdom consisted of 3 islands, one controlled by the king and the others by a rebelling duke. Caitilin would not wait for a clear victory to be decided, so to finish her conquest declared war on both the king and the rebellion. The war was once again easily won, but Caitilin did not live to see it. The wounds finally took her life, leaving Emperor Brangen II to finish the destruction of Scotland. Still, Empress Caitilin had succeeded in her goal of finding glory. In addition to having an island named after her, she was proclaimed Empress Caitilin the Quarreller for her relentless warfare. It wasn't Caitilin the Conqueror, like she might have hoped, but it would do.